Dopamine swipe, dopamine swipe. Followers, likes, double tap. Now they control your life, control your
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the 817 Podcasts. I'm Jimmy here with EJ, and we're excited to dive in this week. How are you feeling right now?
Good, man. I think it's an important pod. It's one of those things that we aren't talking about due to a lot of the distractions with the mass stuff that's happening with universities and schools and Governor Abbott's being harsh on masks and districts and mayors trying to do that. But I actually think we have a ton to talk about. And you did a great job kind of organizing this pod for us.
Yeah, so we're not going to do a whole podcast on what's going on with masks right now. Our big story is around Fort Worth ISD, but it's about the $1.5 billion bond package we're going to be voting on in 3 months. And we'll talk a little bit about everything going on right now with that. But that's been taking the mask debate, which is obviously hugely important for a large unvaccinated population in Fort Worth, has been stealing the headlines. But really this week, there have been a lot of big stories coming across that have gotten pushed to the back burner and maybe gone swept under the rug because of the big debate around masks going on. So we're going to start off talking about some economic development that is happening that's exciting for the city with two big companies and well-known companies announcing that they're bringing manufacturing facilities here. Do you want to lead us into the first one?
Yes. And I want to note here, like, I know you're like, oh, we're going to talk about schools again or Fort Worth ISD. But here, guys, we're talking about in 3 months having to make a decision on the biggest bond proposal in Fort Worth ISD's history. So it is important to all of us. But going to economic development and what we're talking about, if this was an EJ chosen show, we probably would have talked about this the entire 50 minutes. But luckily we have Jimmy to find the hard, dense stuff that we should be talking about.
As soon as I saw this story, I was like, EJ's salivating right now.
So, yeah, and kudos to everyone who's running this, but it's Rivian Automotive, which is a electric pickup and SUV company, is possibly building their largest manufacturer here in Fort Worth that could create 7,500 jobs. If they do that, they will be the second largest employer in Fort Worth. What's really crazy is, like, this is a cool opportunity because, one, Fort Worth we like our pickups. So why not be a part of building the future of pickups? Why I also like this as well is Rivian Automotive is taking a B2B approach. And what I mean, they're partnering with, they got a relationship with Amazon. Amazon is an investor to Rivian. So if you're an investor to someone who is going to need a lot of vehicles to ship a lot of packages, this is a way better win than competing with a Tesla and a Ford to try to get one-off-one consumer trucks. So I really like that. And we have a history of doing stuff like that with Lockheed and
Bell Helicopter.
Yeah, Bell Helicopter. Like, this is kind of our lane. So I like that. I also like that they're a private company right now. So they're not publicly traded like all the other kind of, you have a lot of these like autonomous vehicles and all these other things coming out. So they're still like not a publicly traded company and still can operate like a startup and do some things, even though they're pretty big. So I'm just really pumped about it. A little bit more about it. The package is expected to offer a deal of $440 million in grants and tax breaks to Rivian. And the 7,500 people would be by 2027.
Starting salary or average salary, like $56K, right?
Yep.
I mean, that's really solid.
The deal with Amazon is to build 100,000 electric delivery vans. So, like, the fact that they already have agreements, like, a lot of things, like, sometimes if this was a different company that was like living off a pipe dream, I would feel very nervous about it. But this one is, they're not trying to do the crazy autonomous car stuff that I still think we're talking a decade away, like truly to be.
At least.
Yeah. Like, so it's like these people can be relevant 2 years from now.
Yeah.
And like doing some serious moves. But what is your take? I mean, you worked at Amazon previously, but we also were talking about the headquarters of Rivian's facility. If if Fort Worth is the front runner, but if we get this $5 billion factory, they're looking at putting it to the west side, right out of the loop. And so what's your take on like location, but then also like, do you have any insight of just like, also you worked at Amazon and the concept of like how good of a partnership that could be?
Yeah, I would love to see this manufacturing facility turn into like a headquarters coming here, because I feel like that's what Fort Worth has gotten really good at, attracting manufacturing facilities. And when we talk about like getting companies to come here, that's usually what it entails. And so if these guys are going to be at the forefront of electric vehicles and electric delivery vehicles, it would be really cool to see that headquarters come to Fort Worth as well. And maybe that's something that follows down the line, and like this is a potential foot in the door, because manufacturing facilities like realistically can't be in Fort Worth, you know, like we've got a couple, but they take up a lot of space, like building new ones where they have to go where the land is. And so where are these people going to end up living? Like probably Aledo, maybe Weatherford, Benbrook, maybe some go south towards Crowley or Burleson. So like, I don't know if we talk a lot, and you guys talked last week about, can Fort Worth sustain its growth, and like, what does our growth look like? And this looks like further westward expansion again. And so I think this is a great thing, but I would love to see it snowball into something even more. And then as far as Amazon goes, like when I was there, Amazon's own delivery fleet has increased a ton since I was there. Like the Amazon Sprinter vans weren't even a thing yet when I started. And now like almost every Amazon package is delivered by them. And usually what they build up towards is capacity for the holidays, because typically what would happen is around December 21st or 22nd, we would be trying to print labels for boxes, but UPS, FedEx, USPS would run out of capacity, and so we wouldn't be able to print labels anymore. We would have to wait for packages to get delivered to be able to use those tracking IDs again and then be able to print labels. And so that's been Amazon's goal the whole time, is to build up enough of a fleet themselves to where they're not reliant on UPS and FedEx.
Yeah.
And so if UPS and FedEx aren't making strides towards electric vehicles, which I don't know if they are, it would be really cool to see Amazon overtake them in a big way with this electric fleet.
Yeah.
And this also ties into last Monday, a massive global report about how the earth is heating up and climate change came out. And that really has been brushed under the rug. And so we need massive global investment in anything other than oil. And so for a company like this to come to oil central of the United States, like I would love to see, we need companies like XTO and all of the big oil companies to start to pivot so that we can actually have a planet, so that our kids and our kids' kids can have a livable planet. So this is great in that aspect. It's great in conjunction with the bipartisan infrastructure deal that's going to be pushing electric vehicles. It's great with what Ford is starting to offer with their pickups. And I would love to see it snowball into more and more that invests in the city of Fort Worth and Fort Worth ISD, rather than this might end up affecting more so Aledo ISD, Benbrook ISD, and whatnot.
A little bit more on the numbers here. Like we said, 7,500 jobs by 2027, $56,000 minimum salary. The company will build the factory on the southern end of Wash, the ranch, which is planning a community this upcoming decade to have enough homes for 50,000 residents.
Yeah, there's a ton of houses going in out there.
And they're expecting to make 200 vehicles a year. It would be the second largest employer in the city by 2027. Second largest behind only American Airlines. So this is just a super sweet opportunity.
Big opportunity.
Yeah.
And like kudos to Robert Stearns for getting us to this point.
Like you said, I think I understand the value of having a headquarters, because having C-level positions in the city using their executive strategy and vision to align with a city is valuable. So totally get there. But moving to the second company.
Yeah, the second company, oat milk has exploded over the last 2 or 3 years. And if you have a favorite coffee shop, you've probably seen that at some point they run out of oat milk, because Oatly, which is the top supplier of oat milk in the U.S., hasn't been able to keep up. Which, how could you know that something like oat milk was going to explode all of a sudden? But they're also going to be opening a manufacturing facility up in Fort Worth.
Yeah, newest and largest North American factory, 280,000 square feet, will be completed by 2023 and produce 150 million liters of oat milk annually. So yeah, it's going to be on 7550 Oak Grove Road. So a little bit about Oatly. Oatly is a publicly traded company. They're following the path of Beyond Burger. They're a Swedish based company. They have also factories in Ogden, Utah, and then one more in I want to say New Jersey. They're going to build their largest one here in Fort Worth, and they're talking about 100 employees. So I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, this is also going just east of 35, south of 20. Only one exit south of 20. So, same sort of thing, where are these people going to live? Probably Crowley, maybe Edgecliff. But another thing of anytime a barista somewhere across the country is, pouring some oat milk, they're going to see made in Fort Worth, Texas, which is potentially a different audience than who is used to seeing Fort Worth on something. So another cool economic development. And it was exciting to have two big things like this come this week. And your coffee shops here probably won't run out of oat milk anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. And so our final kind of story before we get into the big story is still on economic development, but it's also just about there's a ton of money happening, being shifted around across the country. And Fort Worth, Tarrant County, Fort Worth ISD is just getting it in all different ways. But we also have our city building and proposing their budget.
Yeah, so, and a word on that real quick. So Fort Worth City Council had a budget workshop this past week, seeing the initial general fund expenditures comparison for fiscal year 2021 to fiscal year 2022. Like EJ said, economic development, that bucket is receiving the largest percent and dollar increase to about 41 million, which is a 41% increase year over year. And then a few other of the big buckets getting increases are really vague. And that's something that hopefully we'll be able to get more clarification on, but non-departmental is getting a 35% increase. What does that mean? Who knows? Planning and data analytics, we don't super know what goes into that, but that's getting a 35% increase. But if you are interested in the upcoming budget meetings, there are town hall meetings from August and September. August 17th, so this coming Tuesday, is the CCPD public hearing and potential action on that budget, which is was Prop A from last summer that we voted on, where we give the police department like $800 million over the next decade. So you can have input on what that goes into. August 19th and 20th is our city council budget work sessions, which are at 9 a.m. in City Hall and online. The 24th is the, if necessary, approval of the CCPD budget and the first public hearing on the general fund expenditures. September 9th and 10th are more city council budget work sessions. September 14th is the second public hearing on the budget and the first public hearing on the tax rate. And September 21st is the anticipated budget adoption. So most of those are at 7 p.m., except for the city council work sessions are at 9 a.m. If you want to see that schedule, we will post a link to it in the description. But your opportunity for your voice to be heard on the budget is coming up very quickly. And us and the new city council members are looking for a lot of clarification on what these, general funds are. We open up one of those buckets and it's another $10 million of police funding. It's like, okay, now we're at $300 million for the next year for the police all in. Like, that's insane. That's double anything else. So there's a lot of unpacking to do that hopefully we'll get to see done over the next couple weeks. So this was all city dollars that I'm talking about. Now we're going to move into the $800 million federal dollars that we have from the American Rescue Plan coming into the city.
Yeah, so there, Tarrant County residents will have an opportunity to help decide and spend more than $809 million of federal money paid directly to local governments. Now, this is through the American Rescue Act. This is how we're making that happen. And Tarrant County is halfway through a series of working sessions. This funding is looking to be focused on creating economic assistance programs, giving funds to affected industries like childcare, improvement to water, sewer, and broadband systems, and coordinating with the 2021 bond program. Now, for Fort Worth, the city is really focusing on the convention center, street realignment, and improvements. I don't know if you want me to go through these hearing dates. August 24th, 17th. Okay, so the hearing dates for what to do with the $800+ million is August 24th at City Hall at 7 p.m. And we'll put all this in the links with the address. September 14th at City Hall at 7 p.m. and September 21st at 3 p.m. Did any of those coincide with the dates you just shared?
I don't think so.
Okay. So different dates. Just want to make sure there.
It seems like it's every other Tuesday. Like they almost alternate what Tuesday gets what budget meeting.
Yeah, and I know a part of the funds we're talking about using for this was improving drinking water. But you had the update saying that.
Yeah, so this past week, the Senate voted like 69 to 30, I believe, to pass the bipartisan infrastructure deal, which is like $1 trillion. It'll be the largest investment in infrastructure in the United States since the New Deal under FDR. And a big part of that is getting high-speed internet access to everyone in the country, as well as repairing all of the country's drinking water pipes. So those are two big investments that will probably be taken off of this plate, which now it's like, we've got a ton of money to spend. We're already trying to pass a bond for $500 million on roads. So like, what are we going to do with this money? I know that Fort Worth ISD has mentioned some in here with getting some money to help supply teachers.
$28 million.
Which is like a drop in the bucket at this point. We're still not seeing public transportation come up in any of this, which is something that we need to talk about and make sure our voice is heard on. If this feels confusing as to what money is what, that's because it is. And that's what we're trying to work through also, and hopefully getting to interview some people over the coming weeks to help break it down as well. All this to say, like, the U.S. is in dire need of infrastructure investment, and Fort Worth is as well. And that's where, when people talk about, like, are we lagging behind China? That's because over the last 50 years, China has been making massive investments in roads and rail across their entire country to make it more connected. And the U.S. just has roads and bridges all over the place that are in dire need of investment. And so both of these programs will help take care of a lot of that and hopefully provide investment, I would think, into, one, public transportation, two, into teachers, and making sure that public school teachers are equipped with what they need to make their students successful. In this past mayoral election, there was a lot of talk about learning loss and what we need to do to help kids catch up. We got money coming from everywhere right now. Like, let's make sure that happens.
And so I just want to, and then let's break it down, because I know our next story is again about more money, and this is going to be our big story. But I want to make sure, even just for me. So the first thing is we have our city budget, which is how much money? The
city budget total is about $761 million, and the difference. So I guess the year-to-year difference is about $43 million, which we thought that we would have less to play with. Yeah. So that's a good thing for Fort Worth, that we have more money to play with. And that's where your voice can really be heard, is how do we use this extra that we have? What do we want to invest in? But the city, so so the basic number is what, 700 million? Like total budget, 761 million. 761 million. But I'm also seeing that there's a $500 million bond they want to pass in 2022. Correct. That's the one that is 100% focused on roads, almost completely outside of the 820 loop.
So now we're at 1.2 billion.
Correct.
Right there. Okay. But now what we just got finished talking about was the federal funds we're receiving from the American Rescue Plan, which is $809 million, but that's countywide.
That's
Tarrant
countywide.
So that includes Arlington, and all the other areas that need stuff. I'm not sure how much Fort Worth directly. Let me see. I'm scrolling down to the story. It doesn't really say how much Fort Worth is getting directly from that. But again, a lot of money.
Right. I mean, Fort Worth is essentially 50% of Tarrant County. So let's just go half of that.
So 400 million. So now you're at 1.6.
Right.
6
billion.
Yeah, billion. And now we're going to talk about
1.5 billion for Fort Worth ISD.
So you want to go ahead and dive into this one?
Yeah. So do you want to talk about the mass first?
I think since we're on a roll with money.
Okay. Let's talk about money.
And then let's talk about this mass stuff might influence this stuff. Right. And it's distracting from the story, because we're making the decision on this 1.5 billion in 3 months.
Yeah. So if that sounds fast, that's because it is. Most of the time, these bond programs are drawn out over, a year, 18 months. But this $1.5 billion bond proposal calls for improvement at every middle school in Fort Worth ISD, a new elementary campus, and upgrades at extracurricular facilities. So there is some concern over the lack of public input so far. But this is the only proposal that has been brought forward, so they're moving forward with it. The vote to propose this bond happened this past week. I believe it happened on Monday, which like Tuesday is when the mask thing started. So obviously like that overtook this story, but it was voted 8-1 to propose this bond, and it will bring renovations to all Fort Worth ISD middle schools, build a new elementary school in Benbrook, and upgrade athletic, fine arts, and recreational facilities. It's the most expensive bond in Fort Worth ISD history. 4 years ago, 70% of voters approved a $750 million bond. So this is literally double that. And they've only got 3 months to get the word out about it. And so that's why we really want to highlight it. The fact is there's no increase in taxes for the taxpayers, says former trustee Ashley Paz. And I mean, our middle schools need it. We're over here in Meadowbrook, and like Meadowbrook Elementary is a really solid school, but then right across the street, Meadowbrook Middle, it's like the thing's falling down, and there's just a bunch of portables that really look like they're in need of something. And then, you know, the high schools around here are pretty solid and have had new buildings as well. So we definitely see that middle school needs the investment.
Yeah, I think what I'm interested here is too is like, I think the Fort Worth ISD, when we talk about this was such a complex episode. I mean, even the fact that we talked all this money, I mean, we've only been on the pod for 30 minutes, but Rivian feels like 2 weeks ago. Yeah. and it's because it's all a massive puzzle piece in Fort Worth. Like we're talking about if you're 40, 50, like think about yourself 10 years from now, like the companies that come here, the money we spend, the schools we support is going to play fundamental to the Fort Worth we're actually building. It's like we're in this weird place where it's like, yes, everyone believes Fort Worth is the next stomping grounds of a very powerhouse city in America. But now we're deciding what does that theme and character look like. And a big key is going to be education. Because what happened to Dallas everyone left Dallas. And everyone wants to be in Frisco, Plano, and away from Dallas ISD. And if that happens to us, you're going to have the same effect.
And that's the big thing with this story is the one school board trustee that voted against it and a couple of former trustees that are against it are saying that the assessment for this is based on an inflated enrollment. So enrollment has dropped 10,500 students since the 2016-2017 school year. Last school year, 76,858 students attended Fort Worth ISD schools. So the people against it, and who's leaving, right?
Yep.
White people that are moving to either private schools or to Keller ISD, Benbrook ISD, all the places we've talked about before. So the people against it are trying to say that because people with means are moving out of Fort Worth ISD, we shouldn't give Fort Worth ISD this much money. And that's what could potentially turn us into what's happened with Dallas ISD, where on an even bigger scale, people of means have left those schools. So that's really what I would say we're fighting against right now is people saying that because enrollment has shrunk, we shouldn't invest in this. And that's just not true. Like the kids in these schools and these campuses need a massive influx of investment. And it would be irresponsible of us to say that because people who have been able to move outside of the loop have taken their kids outside of the loop, we shouldn't invest in them.
And their property taxes. Yep.
Right. Exactly.
And to me, this is the and knowing Fort Worth and knowing Texas and just knowing like we're going to follow, like we're on the path to follow those steps of not investing, like people leaving Fort Worth ISD.
Right.
83% of kids are black and brown today, yet half of Fort Worth residents are white. So, right, like you're talking to You know, like look, compare those, we're like 33, percent there, right? So that means to balance the act back, you need one, if we're playing, funny numbers, that's like one of every white kid going to a school outside of Fort Worth ISD needs to come back.
Right. Yeah.
So it's just a crazy, like we need to, but that's the same time as we're getting Rivian, we're getting Oatly, we're getting new companies that come. We want these middle-class job families to want to believe Fort Worth ISD can lead their kids to a successful life.
Right.
And so that is also like the kicker. If 2027, you're talking 7,500 new workers, how do we get those kids to make sure they're still going to public school, going to Fort Worth ISD? That's why this money is so important. But to me, a lot of that is, it's not just about infrastructure. It's about the storytelling around the nation, around education. And someone who's in it in the last 2 episodes have been very education heavy because Tony and I, but we're in this really scary space. And Annette Gordon Reed talked about the word government schools. And there's this like separation between private schools and government schools. And we are going through like, I wonder what the enrollment's going to be post COVID, like this upcoming,
right?
And what's the drop? Because we don't even know what that drop in enrollment is. And so there's this scary dynamic of, I don't know. It's like, I think of it like I think the post office, like, and FedEx and UPS is like the post office is just hangs on a thread. And now it's just up to a ventilator surviving as a government entity. And FedEx and UPS just came and I think this is way bigger than mail. We're talking the investment of kids.
Yeah.
But like we're in this, like people are starting to treat public education like it's the postal service. And it's such a scary thing that I think one of the best things we can do as humans is invest in our public education and be talent that makes the place. We talked about that in one episode. It's like the talent, we as talent run away and go to Alito. And of course, Alito's a good school. Alito is not a good school because they're doing anything different than what Fort Worth ISD do. They're only good because talent and money run to Alito. But if we stay together, value community, we can create a very awesome city 10 years from now.
Yeah. And so this will come up in 4 propositions on the November 2nd ballot, which if you didn't know we had an election on November 2nd, now you do. We're always voting here.
That's what my friends always say. They're always like, you're always voting. I thought we only like vote once every 2 years. I'm like, no, there's always something going on.
Happens all the time. So Prop A is the largest. That calls for more than $1.2 billion to renovate middle schools and build a new elementary school. Prop B is $98.3 million and would bring upgrades to fine arts facilities across the district. Prop C is nearly $105 million and is focused on building up the district stadiums. Prop D is $76.2 million. It calls for improvements to recreational facilities, including replacing turf at stadiums. We're hoping to have Roxanne Martinez on in, sometime coming up to help dive into what all 4 of these things actually like entirely mean and include, because they need to get the word out on these 4 props as well. If approved, construction could begin in 2022. The bond program was developed with a 5-year planning window, which could change depending on the school board. It's just a lot of information that they need to get out very quickly. And so we're hoping to help be a conduit of that. But we know that Fort Worth ISD needs this money, and it's the proof is there that people are leaving because Fort Worth ISD needs this investment. And so I'm really optimistic that across these 4 things, especially the investment in middle schools, that that could, like you said, help set up Fort Worth and Fort Worth ISD to be a school district of the future.
Yeah. And I think And again, I think this is a marketing problem. This is a storytelling problem across the country. And it's something that we have to figure out because, and it is a tough dynamic. I don't have kids yet, so I'm playing off of free money right now. I'm not making these tough decisions. But a lot of families say like, right, I'm student choice because, you know, some students are better in a private school. Some students are better fit for a smaller class or some like whatever's best for the student. But like at the same time, each of these micro decisions impacts the community. And it's like, it's a game of like, I get as a parent, you want the best for your kid. But at the same time, we're all playing in a game like what's best for all of us. And I think that's where we miss in this conversation.
Well, and the people able to ask that have the privilege to, you know, spend extra time to drive their kids to a further away school and not have to just take whatever's on the bus loop. And like, I get it. Like you said, like you want the best for your kid. And I've heard people say like, why does my kid have to be the martyr for this? And it's like just such a privileged thing to say. But we all need to recognize that, like, there is a community aspect to this, and especially if you're coming from the privilege to drive your kid an extra distance to a school, I would contest that you probably have the extra resources to make sure that your kid's education is being supplemented at home if you feel like there's a gap with whatever's local to you. And so there's not like, and you shouldn't feel bad if, you know, you can go to whatever school instead of what's local to you. But
and there's so much, and I think the BS to the martyr point of view is you're undervaluing what it means for your kids to grow up in actual America.
Yeah.
Like you're undervaluing what it means to hang out with people who are average America, right? Like, or like, and you get so many different advantages. And oftentimes, like when I go into schools, the schools I'm most worried about are the schools that have created a bubble neighborhood for these kids.
Right.
Who actually have no idea how reality actually works.
Right.
And they've been spoon fed and bubble wrapped all their life. And they're stressed out because they're making a 28 on their ACT, but their best friends all have 30s. And they're over here having no idea to how great they are because they're around a bunch of greatness and there's all this insecurity. And then you don't know how to communicate with other people. And all you know is what you grow up with. And it's this really safe thing so that when reality hits you in the face as a young professional, you know, are you going to do something? And that's the legit value that you get from giving your kids a little bit more reality.
Yeah.
And humble beginnings.
Yeah. Well, and so the tie-in of this to masks comes from that enrollment piece. And what is enrollment going to look like this year for Fort Worth ISD? This'll, you know, this comes out on a Monday. This comes out on the day school starts. And as of now, because of a Looney Tunes judge in Tarrant County, there is a restraining order against Fort Worth ISD being able to require masks. So Kent Scribner, the superintendent, superseded a vote this week, made it so that a vote didn't even have to happen requiring masks. Then you get these 4 parents, 3 of which name themselves, one of which is a Jane Doe coward and wanted to stay anonymous, who sued saying, blah, 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 my kids need to see my teacher smile. Then it goes to this judge who, using the citation of an anti-vax, anti-mask conspiracy theorist from Houston, said, yeah, wearing a mask causes long-term damage to kids, so I'm going to extend this restraining order, making Fort Worth ISD and Tarrant County the biggest area in Texas and the only area in Texas where one of those lawsuits has stood up.
Yeah.
So now
this was such a big story week. Holy smokes.
And if you're listening to this, like, you probably know a lot of this, And you're probably sitting here wrestling with this decision yourself on, do I send my kid to school? Like, we don't have any pediatric ICU beds left. Like, what's happening? And man, it's just really heartbreaking and really sad to see ourselves in this place again. And so, like, neither of us are sending kids to have kids of age to send to school. And so, like, we really empathize with you having to make this decision and do what's best for your kid and for your family. And so this restraining order, I believe, ends on like Friday. So after then, there should be able to be another decision made on it. But if enrollment drops and they're not even offering virtual classes yet, then, like we said,
I don't think we are.
No, we're not
At all. Yeah.
at all.
Yeah.
And
which
so,
is crazy.
Which is insane.
Yeah.
Does that make it even less appealing to pass a $1.5 billion bond for Fort Worth ISD?
Yeah.
And then we continue to snowball and snowball. And so that's where we feel like the mask conversation ties in right now. Is there's economic investment in the future of Fort Worth ISD on the line based on these decisions. And Fort Worth is kind of standing out like a sore thumb as the place in Texas that is not doing what is best by our kids right now.
Yeah. There was an article or a story we talked about in one of the pods where something like half of Fort Worth kids don't even go to Fort Worth ISD. I remember it was like, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's pretty big, number, but I think, let me ask you this. We just talked about we were adding up all this money, the city budget, the federal funds are coming, the infrastructure bill is coming. Are there going to be people who are going to say, why do we need to raise more money? It seems like they could just use that money. And do you see some of the Fort Worth politicians being like, we have more money than we need right now, and we'll use this money over here to do this? So my vote is against it. Like, do you see that as an opportunity, a thing that could happen? And then the other part is this mask stuff is creating so many people anti-school and blaming schools for not having their stuff together. And so a lot of people are like, oh, you're going to make my kid wear a mask? Well, we're leaving, right? Or you're not going to have a mask? Well, we're leaving to a charter school that's offering virtual learning.
Yeah.
So I empathize with the public school system because it's one of the best things to building true success in future is a public school system that works for everyone.
Yeah.
And so it's just like, but we are getting hammered, and the perception can make this bond maybe not be supported by your average Fort Worthian.
Yeah. I don't know necessarily about like the city council overlap because they do operate so separately, and this wouldn't come with like an increase of taxes. Like, this is just allocating more money that we're already going to generate towards the ISD. You might get someone like a Carrie Moon who's more invested in Keller ISD to push back on this. So I don't know necessarily there, but it does beg the question, like, one, why did we wait until a week before school starts? Like, we could all see what was coming, right? Like, Florida's been a couple weeks ahead of Texas as far as the curve goes. Our vaccination rates are similar. Like, we can all see what is coming. And honestly, like, all of the other major counties did this a few days to a week before Fort Worth ISD did. So it's another example of just more like reactive, maybe we should do something about this type of decision making. But like you said, like, where are we going to take our kids? You've got both sides, like the people with not wanting masks, like, we're going to take our kids out. The people wanting masks, we're going to take our kids out. So do we invest this money in Fort Worth ISD? And like long term, realistically, like, yeah, we want I would say realistically, a lot of these kids that might get pulled out for a year would hopefully come back. But if they find a nice fit, then, you know, maybe not. Maybe we just continue this trend of more and more higher and higher percentage of kids living in Fort Worth not going to Fort Worth ISD. It's just such a sucky situation created by a lot of really selfish people.
Yeah. And charter schools are growing. I mean, that's another thing. I mean, but
Yeah.
those are free, and those are public schools technically on their own system. I mean, Idea public schools get a lot of that marketing.
Yeah.
Uplift is coming. That's a Dallas group.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're also just having that battle too. I mean, it's just going to be interesting, the evolution of schooling in our lifetime. Because like you said, like if you're someone who has an infant or a toddler, or you don't even have kids yet, by the time you have a kid who goes to high school, you could be talking 15 to 12 to 20 years from now.
Right.
We have no idea what Fort Worth would look like then.
Yeah.
Right. Like all these schools could be everything we ever wanted. And like, oh man, this school used to be run down, but now it got everything. It upgraded. So it's going to be really interesting to see the evolution of public schools.
Yeah. Well, and the building blocks start now.
Yeah.
Right. And
Which is why,
maybe people without kids aren't thinking about that.
But this is why they need to live though.
Right.
And they need to live in areas that need your property taxes, I guess, and need your living because that's how they're going to get better,
right?
So
yeah. I mean, all this to say, at this point, we really hate this for teachers. We hate this for students. We hate that we're at this point, and hopefully, once this temporary restraining order passes, we can get a mask mandate in schools. And one thing I want to end with is they're going against Greg Abbott's orders. Like, what's the punishment? Blah, blah, blah. I personally think that with the handling of Shelley Luther, the salon owner, in summer 2020, that Abbott and Dan Patrick have set a precedent that you can not listen to the governor's orders and, get away scot-free. Like, granted, they were on her side, so there might be a little more pushback, but Dan Patrick literally paid the bail of Shelley Luther, and long term, moving up in court systems, that is a massive precedent to set that, you can go against what Greg Abbott says in an executive order, and that those can easily be overturned and ignored. Yeah. So punishment, I wouldn't be worried long term about what's the punishment of doing this? Is the county going to face anything? I would say no. But I hope that these people that sued Fort Worth ISD go bankrupt, spending money on frivolous lawsuits that don't protect kids.
Scary world.
Well, maybe moving to some more positive news.
I know we're at probably 50 minutes of a lot of content. And if you're Fort Worthy and working through this as well, as you see, you're not alone.
Yeah.
As we made it through that. But let's get to a little bit more fun stuff. Let's hit the losses so we can always end on a win. I'll go first with my loss. My loss is really quick. The actual census report came out, and we are not the 12th biggest city. We did not pass Jacksonville. We are still number 13. So I know a lot of us were hyped that supposedly we jumped, but it looks like we're still number 13.
Blake Bortles still going strong in Jacksonville.
There you go.
And then my loss is that the water district continues to be an absolute nightmare. This time it was someone who came to speak at a private citizen that came to speak at a public meeting, voicing their concern. I mean, there's somebody not being paid, taking time out of their day to voice their concern about something. Could tell that he was being given different treatment by the committee. And so through a Freedom of Information Act request, he obtained the text messages of committee members during the time that he was there and speaking. And they said a lot of really negative, hurtful, disrespectful things about him. And it's just like another layer that we've started to peel off. And shout out to Jessica Priest, who continues to push at the water district and uncovering a lot of things that have been covered up for a long time. But they were just flat out mean and rude. And she even says that there are things that she wasn't going to publish because they're just mean and wrong to say about someone who is coming to voice their opinion about the city. And it sucks that that is the respect that he was being met with. And so I am dreadfully looking forward to more and more of what gets uncovered about the water district. This probably goes the same for especially what some past city council members would say about people. Dr. Ferris has told us that, Jungus and Carrie Moon just sit on their phones the whole time that people are speaking. So they're probably texting each other, potentially. So it just sucks that this was the respect that he was met with.
Yeah. And a little bit about it was like, they were using poop emojis. They're calling him a skunk, using curse words, and
look at running his license plate.
Yeah. Running his, just
run it. Yeah.
But like, honestly, what this showed me is like, one, I bet this is common among this is to me, like when I think of like white power, traditional orgs.
Yeah.
Good old boys club sitting around the golf course talking or messaging to each other.
Yep.
As someone they see as less than try to acknowledge their power and expose it, doing bully games. And that's, yeah. And one, like Fort Worth Report, if you can donate, go donate. Local journalism is so important, especially local journalism that's free, that's not out here doing endorsements on politicians.
Yeah.
That doesn't have a horse in the race. These people are working hard. Fort Worth Report, if there's anything you could do, if you've enjoyed this pod, we have no sponsors, but we love doing this, and we couldn't really do this without Fort Worth Report, the Star Telegram, but Fort Worth Report, go out there and give them some money if you can, because Jessica Priest and the work that a lot of them are doing is just crazy valuable.
Yeah. So moving to our wins, ending on a positive note.
Some fun stuff.
Panther City Lacrosse dropped their jerseys this past week, and they're fire.
Yeah, they're swanky.
I think they look awesome. They're starting their home games in Dickies Arena in December. Which I guess is when the new Premier League lacrosse season starts. But especially, we both said we like the white one more with the purple stripe across the front. But super cool. I saw those and I sent them to you. I was like, man, like these are legit. They did a great job with this.
For sure, Flames. I'm like looking at my size now and all that. I might just embroider my last name on the back of it. Who knows? But anyways, yeah, super cool. I might, I need to go to a game. I'm down to go to a game. My win is also, I got a couple wins. I'm just gonna do a couple quick wins. Simone Biles is coming to Dickies Arena as well in October.
Coming back.
I think that's cool because like this is post Olympics. She wasn't able to compete. So I think she will probably like do a lot of stuff that she was training to do, in the Olympics. I just think it could be a cool moment to see greatness.
Yeah. And I'm glad she feels like she's in the mental space to do that again.
Yeah. So I think super dope there. We also had an Olympic winner, the skeet shooter. He got I think this is his third gold. He's the most decorated skeet shooter, lives in Fort Worth. Shout out to him. And then the other thing is there's a story that I felt like has always, hasn't got the attention, but the nursing shortage in Texas and just around the country and the need for nurses. And I guess the Davies family donated $5 million to TCU's nursing college. to continue to make it competitive. I think I have a lot of friends who are in the medical field. We have world-class hospitals here. And so I just thought that's a win. Like, we're investing in health professionals. So that was my other one.
Awesome. So thanks for sticking with us this whole time. It was a lot of dense money stuff that I feel like we're just scratching the surface on, and we'll have to continue to be unpacked over the coming weeks and months. But really important conversations that have kind of been pushed to the wayside over the past week, and maybe rightfully so. Definitely rightfully so. But we need to make sure we're talking about them so that, you know, come November, come next year when we're voting on other bonds, it's not like, oh, whoa, where'd this come from?
Yeah. Awesome work. Good to have you back.
Yeah, good to be back. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.